Morning, everyone. If you are joining us here, you are part of the BioAfrica Convention 2021, and you are on track 4. We will be dealing with IKS-based innovation in cannabis industrialization. Our main topic will be specifically on the clinical research and innovation value chains for Africa's manufacturing capacity commercialization. So we have a panel of 4 experts, both locally and internationally. And I think it's befitting that we can perhaps start with the local content. I will then maybe introduce our first presenter. I think for the sake of time, maybe just to give some house rules, each presenter will have 10 minutes to present. Then we'll then have a collective discussion session of about 30 minutes. So I will not take questions immediately after your presentation. So maybe then to just kickstart with our local content, we've requested if Professor Ncebakazi can be our first presenter. Prof. Galeni is a faculty member at AHRI. His role is to develop a traditional natural medicine program. This is the program where he's working on the research and development of traditional medicines against COVID-19, HIV, and non-communicable diseases. He also leads on policy engagements at the Institute, and he's also a member of the World Health Organization, specifically on the African Regional Office, with experts on advisory committee on traditional medicine for COVID-19. Prof. Galeni, the platform is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Let me share my screen. Morning, everyone. I'm grateful to the organizers for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you on this session in particular. I'll be speaking in broad brush strokes, but within kind of our African context. Firstly, to just say that herbal medicines have a long history of use in Africa, within a family or within a community. And they are sold, especially in South Africa, to the public in open markets, pharmacies, shops, and of course, from the practitioners' homes themselves. However, most of these, which are claimed to have effective cures for various diseases, do lack some scientific evidence of safety, efficacy, or quality. Thanks to a concept of reverse pharmacology, the process for research on traditional medicine has been revolutionized in that regard. Yet, of course, we can still do issues of mechanism of action to animal models much more quicker because the product is already being used on humans, so to say. But what are the issues for regulators? Of course, they're looking for evidence. The gold standard, of course, are the 3 safety, efficacy, and quality that are still important. But understandably so that this is a product based on traditional medicine or herbal medicine. So it's necessary that there is ethnomedical evidence that is gathered to show that this is an African herbal product. It has a history of use. There may be pharmacopoeia that supports that, and other preclinical evidence that may go with it. But I must indicate that there is capacity to conduct clinical trials in our country and probably in various parts of the continent. However, I must indicate that they're not cheap. They're quite costly. And of course, this has become a prohibition or inhibition of how this industry can grow. But on their own, they're aimed at generating clinical and laboratory data that will guide decision makers on how to register these products, and of course, such that they can be used rationally as herbal medicines. The team needs particular skills on kind of clinical trials. You need a herbalist to understand the product, a clinician, statistician, research nurse, technologists are geared to conducting such work. And of course, the value chain here is that you still need the products themselves, the raw materials, and of course, you need the finished products from that has been manufactured. And I should say this is possibly our weakest link at the moment. And of course, appropriate labeling that conforms to standards. I must say that this sector has a potential to create jobs and grow the economy once we meet these kind of regulatory requirements and to compete globally for that matter. Now, the requirement for good manufacturing practice for herbal medicines, as I said, it's part of, you need the product itself to meet good agricultural practices of cultivation and collection of the plants as starting materials. And of course, then you process them. The facility must meet those requirements, the GMP requirements, for that matter. This is, of course, different for the healer-patient relationship. These are proprietary medicines, herbal medicines that are marketed widely. But for the patient-healer relationship, there's not this strict requirement, so to say. Now, Africa has become a free trade area, which then opens up the market and becomes even much more important that regulators equally can compare notes. So organizations like the World Health Organization, the African Regulatory Standards Authority are working on kind of harmonizing to make it easy for products to cross borders much more readily. If the product is already registered in one country, the same standards would be utilized across the board, which is a good opportunity for the continent as a whole to grow. And I wanted to share these few thoughts with you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion that would follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for bringing that perspective. I think immediately, maybe without even engaging further on some insight you've shared, perhaps let's call to the podium Prof. Kingo. Hope I'm pronouncing it well, Prof. Prof. Kingo is a professor in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics School of Health and the founding member of the Nevada Institute of Personalized Medicine, UNLV. She has extensive experience in multidisciplinary collaborative research and statistical consulting in biomedical research. Prof is also an expert in observational clinical research, where he had come up with outcomes on research, personalized medicine research, technology evaluation, cancer research, and osteoporosis-based research. Over to you, Prof. Kingo.
Yeah, it's my turn.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, it's my. Could you see my PPT?
Yes, we can see your slide. If maybe you can put it on projecting mode.
It's okay?
Yes, it's fine. Perfect.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. And I'm Wu Qing from Beijing University of Chinese Medicine. I'm very glad to invite you to take part in this conference. I'm working on pharmaceutics of traditional Chinese medicine. So today I'll say something about new TCM drug development and quality control. Traditional Chinese medicine in China has a very long history, more than 2,000 years. Even though nowadays it's a very important part of the health service. This slide, I want to show you how the TCM used in clinic. Most of the herbs from the natural plant, after collected, we call them crude herbs. Through a special processing, we get the decoction pieces. And this decoction piece is like this. This is the main raw materials for TCM medicines. In some cases, we use the decoction pieces into the decoctions delivered to the patient, of course, based on the TCM doctor's formula. In other cases, the patients are given the Chinese patent medicines as more in different dosage forms, as SPOs, capsules, tablets, or even injections. Of course, this is more convenient, more stable, even more efficiency. These two forms almost have to have. Among the Chinese patent medicines, most of them are new drugs developed maybe near the 50 years. Chinese government encouraged the innovation, TCM, scientific research, and technology development to develop more new drugs to meet the clinic need. For example, in this special period, there are 3 famous TCM remedies and the 3 Chinese patent medicines used for COVID. Maybe some know this. And for the 3 TCM remedies, the pharmacist used the decoction pieces into decoction to the patients. And the 3 Chinese patent medicines, such as Lianhuaqing granules, Jinhuaqing granules, and the Ncebakazi injections. These are the new TCM drugs, and is developed several years ago. So you can know the Chinese patent medicines play a very important role in the health market, and accounting for about 1/3 of pharmaceutical industry. Nowadays, there are about 9,000 approved Chinese patent medicines, and with about 60,000 approved numbers. So before new TCM drugs go to the market, they must should have a approval number. And under the law of the drug administration, is a legal procedures. In China, these procedures have 2 stages. First is for study, or we call them pharmacy study. This study, the dossier including in this stage, maybe 3 parts. The data of and reports about manufacturing process study, and the quality study, and the pharmacological and toxical study. All these data and the research reports must submitted to the FDA, and they will be reviewed by the experts committee. If all of these pass the evaluation, they can go to or conduct the clinical trial study. If the clinical trial study finished, and the data and the reports of this study are reviewed and passed the evaluation, after this, new drug certification will be ensued upon by the drug regulatory department to the applicant. So you can note that nowadays in the TCM drugs production factories and use the modern equipment. They are very different with the traditional types. So to assure them quality during the development stage, we will carefully study all the factors, all the parameters could be affect the quality, such as the crude herbs quality, and such as the extraction solvent. It's very important because we should carefully to extract the active ingredients in herbs. Of course, it's based on the they studied and based on the characteristics of the active ingredients. We selected the solvent to assure them to go to the final product, and also the parameters of the manufacturing procedures and manufacturing apparatus. We also carefully to select them to assure the quality of the new drugs, and to assure that all research data and all research reported are credible and accurate. In China, we conduct the GAP, GMP, GLP, GCP, and all this is the measures to assure the quality control. GAP is good agricultural practice. It's a standard for the Chinese crude herbs. And GMP as good manufacturing practice is a standard for pharmaceutical products. A drug manufacturer, they should get a GMP certification and comply with the GMP requirements during the production. And GLP and GLP is a standard for pharmacological and toxical studies to make the data and report accurate. And GCP, all you know, is a standard for clinical trials. Is a standard for the design, clinical trial design, and conduct, and the performance, or the analysis. Yes, it's all these the measures they use today in the research work. And also, I want to tell something is about the conformity of the batches and to ensure the final products to meet the quality requirements and the very stable batch to batch. The analysis instruments such as the TLC and the HPLC are used to do the qualitative and quantitative test to make sure all the active ingredients are in the final products. And nowadays, the fingerprints like this are commonly used in TCM products quality control because it's found it's suitable for the complex substances products. Okay, that's all of my present. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor King Wu, for such insight. And I appreciate, I think, the emphasis you've given specifically on the quality control and quality assurance, which I believe is something that as the continent, we can also draw some lessons from. I think without any further ado, perhaps we can then move to Prof. Wilfred Ngwa. Prof. Wilfred Ngwa is a professor in the physics department at the University of Central Florida. His research is focused on clinical translations and technologies or approaches that can increase access to quality cancer treatment. This also includes smart radiotherapy biomaterials, tiny drones to target cancer or nanoparticles drones, and also phytomedicine. He's the founding director of the Global Health Catalyst, which is dedicated to catalyzing high-impact international collaboration to reduce global health disparities in research, education, as well as oncology. Professor Ngwa, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm very delighted and happy to be able to share some thoughts about this very important convention on the clinical research and innovation value for Africa's manufacturing. So, I'll come from a very different angle here. I'm really very focused on talking about collaborations and how you can move, products from farm to the bedside of patients or consumers. And obviously doing that means that, like the last speaker said, you have to go through all the stages of the good quality practice right from the farm, because we know that as you think about phytomedicine, where here I mean, medicines from plants, you have to think about whatever you get from the farm, the quality of what you get on the farm is what the patient will get. So starting from the soil, from the cultivation, this is really important to make sure that you get the best quality products. And then as you think about moving that to the patient, to the consumer, you really have to think about making sure that the clinical trials are also done in a way that is effective. So the science is, science drives the efficacy, the toxicity data that you're going to get. And you want to make sure that, the clinical trials follow the right practice, the good practice that the last speaker talked about. But the way we really approach this, so, in 2019, so like was mentioned, I'm the director of the Global Health Catalyst. So this initiative, we launched these International Phytomedicines and Medical Cannabis Institute in 2019. And the whole goal of that was really to catalyze collaborations because we see, as you know, Africa in particular and other low and middle income countries, 80% of the populations uses phytomedicine. And again, when I say phytomedicine, I mean medicinal plants. So it's a healthcare system where, as you think about addressing disparities in healthcare, where depending on where you are born, you may have access to treatment. Say, for example, when you have cancer, you may have access to treatment just depending on which country you're born in. You may have more privileges, more access to treatment compared to other countries. But the healthcare system, is such that, many people rely on medicinal plants, unfortunately, without a lot of the science, the evidence to drive, the efficacy and the toxicity. So you don't really know what's the dose that you should take of your, qualitatively, but in your mind, but it's not driven by, rigorous science. And so, there's a really great opportunity for low and middle income countries, including Africa, to really benefit both health and wealth. So if you actually think about the vast biodiversity and, the plants, medicinal plant qualities that are there, you could really convert that into a way that people can have access to that healthcare system from medicinal plants. But you also want to make sure that the products are manufactured locally in Africa to generate wealth, or that Africa gets a return on that. That's really, really important. And so when we launched this institute, we actually had the minister. It's a really good collaboration from Africa. So I direct this program. I would bring, we bring top leaders from policymakers, government leaders, from academia, from industry, and they come to Boston to have it. And basically what they do is they are able to find ways to collaborate. That's the key word in the conference. And that's the same thing for this important conference that we have today. I've seen that there's a big focus on collaborations. And so, this is when we launched this, this is this represents just a snippet of, the different collaborators and stakeholders from different industry, from the top institutions in the world. And one thing we really wanted to make sure was we want to set a standard where people can have the highest quality products. And we actually had, our pastel farms in South Africa, Representative Dr. Braylin Chetsunge, who is very well-educated woman who owns a farm and has one of the first licenses in South Africa for cultivating medical cannabis. And so, we really want to make sure that those collaborations are international. And I think that that's why this conference today is doing the same thing. So what's the key goal here of the Institute? And obviously we are always open to collaborations. It's really, there are 4 parts of it: thinking about the research, thinking about education, thinking about care. So care is the most important thing. You want to make sure that people have access to the care that's necessary. And then continuous outreach. You want to involve the government leaders. You want to involve industry people who are key for commercialization and creating the jobs that will create the wealth locally. And so it's really key here to talk about collaborations. And I just share an example here for a collaboration where we've had, so in 2019, we published this work from Harvard on, this flavonoid derivative from cannabis that was able to help for cancer, pancreatic cancer. And now we're actually doing multi-center clinical trials on this, when initiating that in the United States. That's going to involve, multiple institutions, and then we're extending that to low and middle income countries like in Africa as well. So it's become one of, every single day we get patients who are asking us about this. But there are really opportunities where you can create something like this, where even low and middle income countries can have access to the treatment. And I want to close by just talking about, to think about collaborations, talk about the Black Panther, Wakanda. It's really Africa. It's a futuristic, it's science fiction, of course, but this movie was a blockbuster in the United States, partly because, and around the world, partly because the superpower ability of the Black Panther really comes from what? From a herb, heart-shaped herb in Wakanda. But as you think about this picture, think about the Africa's richness in biodiversity and the power of the plants that are there. And I talk about medical cannabis just an example because it's just one plant. I've seen that in this track that people talked about that. Obviously that has to go through regulatory processes and all of that. And what we did with that study that we did, we actually showed that, if you can deliver, these extracts very well, these are flavonoids. They are not actually the ones that give you, that need high regulation. You can find these really things, these kind of medicines that can really help a lot of people. So there's great opportunity for health and wealth for Africa. And I think this is an area where, governments should invest more. And I just end by saying that there are definitely lessons that we can learn from the United States as well. In the United States, 36 states have legalized medical cannabis because they're recognizing the value. It's a $300 billion market. For Africa, I think estimates about $7 billion. So there's a great opportunity for health and wealth. And I think that collaborations will be key, in moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ngwa, for such insight and bringing the international perspective, and also for the emphasis specifically on the collaboration. I think there's so much that we can deliberate on just specifically on that. Maybe then before we can go to our discussion, we'll then have Dr. Lungile Shoba as our last panel member. Dr. Lungile Shoba Skali is the Managing Director of Nkazimulo Yenkosi Empowerment, which focuses on consulting and business incubation. She's also collaborating with Cameron Business Incubator, where they support indigenous knowledge holders and entrepreneurs to grow into sustainable enterprises. She was the head previously of the Health Strategic Technology area at the Technology Innovation Agency, which is one of the key sponsors for this convention. Dr. Shoba Zikali, over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much for affording me this opportunity to share with you our area of interest. As alluded to before, my name is Dr. Lungile Shoba Zikali. And the title of my presentation is formalization of the traditional IKS sector through value chain development. South Africa is one of the world's 17 mega diverse countries in the world, and these are countries where you have a high concentration of biodiversity, and they are all shown in green in this map. But however, South Africa to date doesn't really have a coherent and comprehensive strategy on how to beneficiate this biodiversity for the benefit of its people and also its economic development. In addition, there's a lot of informal trade in indigenous plants in the country, and the one that was studied the most is the one is the hub in Durban, because it's quite busy. But what you should focus on is that primarily this sector focuses on trading raw plant material. There's very little processing of these products. It's minimal, if any, and most of the value addition happens when traditional healers are prescribing products to their clients. And as you can see, the trade value for the raw material alone was 520 million per year in 1999. Currently there's paucity of information about the sector because it's informal. But at the level of prescription by healer, you can see that the value jumps. There's a lot of value addition, and it jumps to 2.6 billion a year. And then you also have some of the trading, a little bit of the trading happening at what they call multi-shops. And these are really downtown shops, and most of the time they are run down. Remember, this sector, because it's informal, it's underdeveloped, it's not developed at all. And just to say it's actually neglected. But you do have some formal pharmaceutical manufacturers, and there are very few in the country, about 5 to 10. And then you also have informal manufacturers, but the quality of the products that they produce is really questionable, because they don't have the resources and the infrastructure and the capacity to ensure a quality of products. But there is a value chain that exists, even though the sector is informal, but there is a value chain that exists, and the value chain, people are very, very active in this value chain. You have traditional healers and rural women active, very active at the harvesting, and they harvest wild plants. And that on its own has got consequences that a lot of the plants that are important in the sector, that are really highly sought out by traditional healers, are getting extinct. Some of them are already extinct outside of the protected areas. And then from harvesting, these are transported using public transport to wholesalers, which will involve also harvesters and street traders, and then also to places where they are processed, and they are processed at traditional healers places of practice. You have also grinders who are involved in that, and some informal manufacturers. And the retailing happens primarily at the traditional healers' place of practice, and it's usually through prescription. And then there's some also at the multi-shops downtown, and that's usually self-medication, where a person can just go in and buy whatever they want. And the consumption is usually in Black residential areas, or where there are transport nodes within the cities. And most of the consumers, I think about 85% of the society depends on African traditional medicine. And then the formal market value chain involves a cultivation and harvesting by commercial growers. I did indicate that it exists, but it's just a very few. But the transport there, they also use private transport to processing facilities, and the retail is at chemists or health shops or private practices. But the retail of the formal of products through the formal value chain is really, really limited. And what you have to note that because this one is the informal value chain it's so informal, and they use public transport, there's usually a deterioration of the quality of the product from harvesting to when it gets processed. So by the time it's retailed, there's a lot of wastage that can be arrested in a lot of these links. So we look at what are the possible intervention. Can you still hear me? I got a message that, okay. Yes. My Wi-Fi is a bit unstable, sorry. The interventions that we can have is at harvesting, we could organize harvesters who are mainly rural women and assist them to become formal producers or farmers of the medicinal plants themselves, and assist them, organize them into cooperatives to achieve economies of scale, assist them with agronomy, R&D, and also just provide the centers that provide training on medicinal plant cultivation and farming, and also provide incubation support for them to manage their farmers properly. And to address the transport link, we set up processing facilities close to places of cultivation and harvest, or just set up proper transport system with a cold chain facility where necessary. And then to formalize the wholesale aspect, organize street traders into distributors of raw material, and provide training to them and incubation support to enable them, to upgrade them to be formal distributors who operate in the sector professionally and in a financially sustainable way. And with regards to processing, set up mills to be used by the informal millers, but train them and transform them into professional millers by providing incubation support. And once they are established, assist them to secure funding to establish their own mills and operate them. And also assist healers who are interested in product development and and assist them with contract manufacturing for market testing, and support them to grow to establish their own enterprises and grow them and expand their own markets, and assist them to adhere to quality standards so that their products will be suitable for the market. And in the retail link, really educate traditional healers and herbalists on how to produce these products in a hygienic manner, and complying with good manufacturing standards, assist with certification of products, and also support multi-shops to modernize and upgrade their facilities and sanitize it so that even their customers will be happy, because this is what the market demands. And then at the consumption, increase advertising and promotion. And we could do this by operating within an innovation ecosystem. Formalize this informal IKS system, but a sector, but and couch it in an innovation ecosystem, so that all these informal players will also be able to access professional skills to enable them to really produce products that can really compete in the official market, both locally and globally. And really, this cluster should display the country's strong desire to benefit, to beneficiate our indigenous resources, and to beneficiate indigenous knowledge, and to also redress historical imbalance where a very active sector is ignored or neglected. And this is my last slide. We provide things like to the participants training on product and process development, manufacturing, business development and management, and also link them to contract R&D for maybe plant micropropagation, production, and just also product development and upscaling, set up contract manufacturing to help them at the initial stages of commercialization, to produce enough to test the market and to penetrate the market. But once they've developed enough track record, then we could assist them to secure funding from other funders who require such input, and also provide them all the business support that they need to make their operations to be viable and sustainable financially. And in short, really, we need to use what is in our hands. The value chain, this is my last slide, the value chain exists. We can't ignore it. And if we really want to develop the economy and develop our people, this value chain exists, it's active, it's costed to billions of rands per annum. Even, you know, in the scriptures, it does say we have to use whatever is in our hand. We should not ignore them, and we should not exclude them in favor of people who are able to wear suits and have degrees and are able to sit in boardrooms. We have to make sure that this sector benefits the primary players and owners of the sector. So in short, what we really do is look at utilize the natural environment, the natural biological resources with the knowledge, with the extensive knowledge that exists in the minds of our people, translate that into commercial enterprises where they can really earn a lot of money, grow the economy, improve the lives of people, and improve their well-being and assets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lungile Ncebakazi, for your insight, particularly with the comparison of potential opportunities for the informal sector. And I think we have about, 20 minutes or less for us to conclude our session. And I would like to perhaps take some questions. If there are any questions that are coming from the floor, I'd like maybe to at least award each and every panel member to an opportunity to attend to a question. I'm just quickly trying to browse through our chat to see if ever there are any questions there. I don't see anything. Okay, maybe then perhaps just to kickstart our discussion, Dr. Galeni gave us a very good perspective in terms of the approaches within the clinical research space. Now, if then we're talking about indigenous knowledge, and clearly by just that on its own, we cannot exclude our people who may most likely not even have formal education. Now we want to talk about the value chains where we are inclusive of these people. We are also cognizant in terms of the skills or even capacity gaps that are within our research space. Before you can even leave that, we also tap into other challenges that even our research institutions are facing, things like your research infrastructure, for example, things like you still have a very highly fragmented innovation ecosystem. Now, I think I want to pose this question not only to one panel member, but any panel member can tap into it. How then do we ensure that, given now all of these dynamics from the disfragmentation of our systems and to the capacity or maybe intellectual gap between our indigenous knowledge holders and our researchers, then you there's still also the elephant in the room of our regulatory space, even before we can talk to industrialization and tapping into the international market. So how then can we perhaps, I think, level the foundation in such a way that our indigenous knowledge holders are recognized, formally recognized, I think, as Dr. Lungile Ncebakazi has advocated in terms of let us create opportunities for the so-called informal sector, which I really don't think we should even be using that term, because our indigenous knowledge system is a formal sector on its own. Maybe let me just pause from their colleagues to say, let's perhaps look at opportunities of leveling the ground, because my view is that we cannot even talk industrialization when we still consider another sector informal.
Look, thank you, Chair, for this. What is happening in South Africa is that the Department of Science and Innovation is kind of leading a model of a consortium of research institutions linked with the localized traditional health practitioners. So, for example, I'm in KwaZulu-Natal, so it's easier to build that. The healers in KZN would approach me, but the consortium is arranged around this kind of research value chain. So you've got the Agricultural Research Council that would lead the kind of agricultural agronomy work to institutions that specialize in phytochemistry, all the way to clinical trials. So there is that model. What has not yet kicked in, of course, in a larger way, is the funding for clinical trials, and which then are the ones that kind of, breakthroughs are announced through such. And of course, there's been an issue in South Africa of our regulator not being up to speed to open this market. But in Africa, other countries are way ahead of us. So we, as I'm saying, there's a free trade zone. So Africa is open. Ghana, Nigeria, and other countries are registering products. And some of those products are listed in their countries as part of the essential medicines for treatment, even in the public sector. So we wouldn't use South Africa as an example that must limit us. There's many opportunities. There are other countries that have progressed much more than that. Yet, I mean, the strides that are here in South Africa, I think we are not that far to making those major breakthroughs. And so I'm very positive that we can get there. So what Dr. Ncebakazi Galada is mentioning is, of course, that we need to work in a much more collaboratively way, as I think Professor Ngwa is also emphasizing the need for collaboration. And we had, through the department, had built bridges, of course, like with the Beijing University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. So we do have collaborations to that extent with South Africa. And so there are these possibilities. I think what this convention does is kind of bring us together even much more to engage much more, which I think is far more useful. It's like a starting point. I think we'll have much more discussions post this convention that now we've even met more so. And I think China has had a bilateral agreement with South Africa on traditional medicine, amongst other things. So there will be much more opportunities, I think so, yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Kaneni. Any perspective from the panel members? I think also...
Can I go?
Yes, Dr. Ncebakazi, you can go ahead.
Yes. Yes, there is quite a bit of activity in the country, strong activity and collaboration, particularly in the research aspect, as Prof. Galeni has articulated. That is very well coordinated, but it ends there. There isn't a translation further downstream into real commercialization of these products. And even in rare instances where that happens, and talking also to the regulations in the country, the regulations are not only limited to SAPRA, approving tradition and licensing traditional medicine in the country, but the regulation are also got to do like with the BAPS regulation and how the indigenous knowledge holder benefits in the current system, in the current formal system. The indigenous knowledge holder is the least benefiter from the knowledge that they have, because it's them who are the originators of this knowledge, and the researchers know what to research based on the information that they get from the indigenous knowledge holder. But we have not worked out a system yet on how to make sure that the indigenous knowledge holder fully benefits from a commercialization or even any utilization of this knowledge. The scenario at the moment is that they have to wait for a long time while the researchers are sorting things out, and the careers of the researchers are progressing at that time, while the indigenous knowledge holder is static, basically. So that on its own causes some inhibition or reluctance for full cooperation and disclosure by indigenous knowledge holders. So my hope is that we will, in the end, reach a stage where they really own their knowledge, and the indigenous knowledge holders also own the outputs of their knowledge, because with the benefit share access and sharing regulations, perhaps regulations right now, the benefits for indigenous holders are really trickle. They are very small. So we really hope to expand those.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ncebakazi, for that. Maybe if I can come back to you, Prof. Kingu, we understand China is one of the countries that really have capitalized on your indigenous knowledge. And if you go to the African market, there's a wealth of Chinese-based traditional medicine in our markets. Maybe you can share some insight perhaps on the position that Africa can maybe adopt in ensuring that when we talk IKS bio-innovation value chain into industrialization, it is not just a talk show, but perhaps when we come back in the next convention, we'll be showcasing quite a number of products that have stemmed from strategic intervention that the South Africa and the continent at large would have perhaps adopted from your angle.
Okay, thank you. And I have learned a lot about the Africa health and Africa health market, and before I have no common sense about it, but as I know, it's similar between the traditional Chinese medicine and the Africa nature plants. As the development, I think they have the same development way to do it. But I think the first important thing is to respect the clinic experience. That's the most important thing, is the clinic valuable in the market. If it's efficiency, that is most important. And nowadays in the traditional Chinese medicine's development, we are just how to say, to more respect the traditional theories and the traditional use. So in the past 30 or 20 or 30 years, we just study more the chemical substances and the modern pharmacological studies. But nowadays we know it's some different, very different with the with the Western medicine. So just as I said, yeah, nowadays we just how to say, to develop new drugs just under the lead of the clinical use, and to try to find the not the single substance chemical pure compound, just use the fingerprint to control the quality and to compare to the decoction, to the extraction, and to the final product. That is equivalent more to emphasize this. Just sorry, I just want to say, and you maybe have your theories and your clinical use experience that is very valuable. And if you need some technology or some how to processing, how to make the GMP, we have some experience in that, so we can cooperation in the later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Awung. I would have loved us to dwell much on this discussion, but unfortunately we've run out of time. But I want to believe that this session, this discussion is not only going to end on this virtual platform, but we'll be able to take advantage of the collaboration opportunities so that we can really tap into the industry and our indigenous knowledge holders also become the active players in the market. With those words, panel, I would really like to appreciate and thank your time. Also, thank you to our audience who took time to connect. I think we'll probably now go back to other streams, but I also want maybe to challenge each and every of us to ensure that we really emphasize on these collaboration opportunities. And I think there's a recent study that has indicated that South Africa's cannabis market alone is estimated at a value of about 27 billion. And this is just not even looking at just medicinal, but also other value-added products. So we believe that if we are really doing things right and the way we've just shared and actually practicalize them or make sure that they are implementable or tangible actions on the ground, we will be able to have a very fair share of this cannabis market. Thank you so much to our panel, and may you have a wonderful day further as we continue with the engagements during the Bio-Africa Convention. I thank you.